has a low chance to grant you clairvoyance. Grants you target and to near allies all the effects of premonition and 100% effectiveness. Your target and two near allies. Oh my god, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Are they okay? They published another set of hero talents for the War Within. And one of them is Keeper of the Growth, which is the balance / restoration druids combo. So both Restore druids can run this, these hero talents, and Moonkin. So, the first talent is called Dream Search. And what it says is, Force of Nature grants 3 charges of Dream Burst, causing your next Wrath or Starfire to explode on the target, dealing nature damage to nearby enemies. Damage reduced above 5 targets. So this is the balance portion, and the Rest of Druid portion is Growth Guardians, causes your next targeted heal to create 2 Dream Petals near the target, healing up to 3 nearby allies, stacks up to 3 charges. So for Moonkin, this basically just means that whenever you press your Force of Nature, you get a little bit of extra AoE on your next fillers. It is reduced above 5 targets, so it's not infinite scaling. It does nature damage, which is interesting to me, because that means that it only scales with solar eclipse and not with lunar eclipse, which is interesting because if it also works on Starfire, and I would want to cast Starfire in lunar eclipse and not in solar eclipse. Of course, if you're an Incarn or a Celestial Alignment, then it doesn't really matter because you get both eclipses, and therefore you also get the nature damage bonus. But yeah, if it's not in an eclipse, then maybe you would have to think about what to do. It's a math thing. Obviously, we don't know the exact number on how much damage this would do, so we don't know if it would be worth it to enter solar eclipse when you cast your trees to get the Wrath and the nature damage bonus on it, or if it's not worth losing out on the Starfire AoE, the base AoE. But yeah, interesting. So then we have, let's go left first. We have Treants of the Moon. Your Treants cast Moonfire on nearby targets about once every 6 seconds. This to me seems a bit weak of a talent. Just because 1 Moonfire every 6 seconds is really, like, that's not a high frequency, right? And if the mastery stays the way it is right now, having Moonfire on your targets is a big portion of our damage. Not the Moonfire itself, but it providing more arcane damage to target. So not having Moonfire on targets is a big damage loss. And you don't necessarily want to wait until your trees put Moonfire on everything. Like, I don't think that's worth it at all. So that's why I'm thinking this is a pretty weak talent, and you would only really have it as a bonus. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of this. Then we have a choice note here between Power of Nature and Durability of Nature. Power of Nature says your Force of Nature treants no longer taunt and deal 20% increased damage. And then Durability of Nature says your Force of Nature treants have 50% increased health. So here again, it's a tuning thing, right? It's pretty... I think it is interesting to have the option for your trees to not taunt, because sometimes having trees taunt is a big downside. In Mythic Plus, for example, if you put down trees and you taunt, all of a sudden the mobs turn towards the trees, and you cannot control the trees because they're not pets. So the trees are somewhere, and the mobs turn towards the trees, which means that the frontals that the mobs are casting are also going into random directions. So for melee players, it's actually very dangerous to put trees down if the mobs have a frontal, because then the melee players don't see where the frontal is going, because usually the melee players don't go off of the animation of the mobs, but rather of the position of the aggro target, right? And usually the aggro target is the tank, so they just try to stand on the opposite side of where the tank is. Now, if the trees are taunting, you don't know, it's very hard to keep track of the trees' position because there's 3 of them. So that's not ideal. Therefore, having a talent that lets the trees not taunt and also makes them do 20% more damage is probably something that we would pick up if we play this. if we play this, obviously a number thing and something that will have to be calculated and theory crafted later. Now, of course, also having the trees taunt can also be good. It's not only bad to have trees taunt. Sometimes you want to taunt to alleviate the pressure on the tank. Sometimes you want to taunt because the tank died. Sometimes you just randomly want to taunt, you know. So it's maybe not always picked up, but most of the time in Plus, I feel like you would want to go with this one. The 50% health increase is kind of weird, I think, though, just because if you want your trees to actually tank, then a 50% health increase is nothing. And I don't know how they think this is even gonna work, because the way the trees are coded, in my opinion at least, is that their health pool isn't very high. They just like survive a certain amount of hits. That's what it seems like, at least. Because otherwise they would just get one shot. Like the way that pets are coded is kind of weird. I'm not sure. To me, it doesn't seem like the health is really relevant, though. So I'm not sure how this is going to work with the 50% increased health. All right, then we have another choice note here. Bounteous Bloom and Early Spring. Bounteous Bloom says your Force of Nature trains to generate 3 astral power every 2 seconds. And then Early Spring is Force of Nature cooldown reduced by 10 seconds. Again, this is just going to be like a number thing, depending which other talents you picked up. If you pick up the extra damage that the trees do, then maybe the 10-second duration cooldown reduction would make sense. If you pick up more health, then maybe astral power would make more sense, and so on. It just kind of depends on what talents you pick up here, I think. But yeah, just a little bit of astral power generation. This is just a shorter cooldown. When you take a shorter cooldown, you always have to remember, does it line up with things still? Like with Pulsar procs, for example. Is a 10-second cooldown reduction worth it if it doesn't line up with Pulsar anymore? Or do you have to take the 10-second reduction for it to actually line up with Pulsar? Then in the middle here, we have expensiveness. Your maximum mana is increased by 5%, and your maximum astral power is increased by 20. Now, technically speaking, a 20 increased astral power pool is not actually a damage gain for Moonkin. So this is actually kind of, it's more of a quality of life talent rather than a damage increase. Because it doesn't really matter if you have master power or not. Unless you have to move a lot from one, like without taking a break in between. If you have to move from one point of the room to the other point of the room without ever stopping in between, then getting 20 extra astral power will give you like one extra Star Surge that you can cast while moving. That's it. Then we have Cenarius Might here. Casting Star Surge or Starfall increases the damage of your next Star Surge or Starfall by 10%. Stacking up to 2 times. Casting another spell cancel this effect. What? Casting Star Surge or Starfall increases the damage of your next Star Surge or Starfall by 10%. Stacking up to 2 times. Casting another spell cancels this effect. That's a very weird talent. Oh my god, I do not like this talent. What? Huh? That is very weird. I mean, I guess this is just another of these stupid talents that really emphasize on spending all of your astral power at the start of an eclipse. Which I personally am not a big fan of at all. Like, I hate the fact that a lot of our talents are kind of really like putting us into this play style. Because the way the eclipse system works, just because we have an eclipse system doesn't mean that we have to play the way they force us to play with because of our talents. And I don't understand why they keep doing this. Because the way we play Moonkin right now is we pool astral power, we enter eclipse, we spend astral power. Then we pull astral power again, we enter the next eclipse, and we spend astral power again. Like we always have the same playstyle where we pull astral power, spend it, pull astral power, spend it, pull astral power, spend it. And the reason why we do this is because we have talents that specifically give us a benefit for doing this. Like, it's just worth it because of the talents that we have. Something like Starlord, something like Rattle, something, you know, similar things to this. Obviously, Rattle we don't have anymore, but yeah. And I don't know, I just don't like the fact that they kind of like shove you into this playstyle without giving us many other options. Because the problem with this playstyle is that it makes you really immobile. The problem is that if you lose a lot of damage for spending Astral Power on Star Surges or Starfalls outside of those windows, then that makes you immobile. It also means that spending all of your Astral Power is beneficial to your damage, but it is not beneficial to your mobility, right? Because without talents like these, you can hover at like 50 Astral Power permanently, and if you would have to move surprisingly, then you at least would be able to cast a Star Surge or something while moving, right? But we can't do that because it's a damage loss. Like, we don't want to sit on 50 Astral Power permanently. We always want to pool, spend. And I feel like that's just a really boring playstyle, and also just like annoying that we're forced into it and forced to be super mobile. Especially now that we don't have Stellar Drift anymore with the cast while moving thing. I feel like we are pretty immobile when we move, unless we happen to be able to move at the start of an eclipse, right? If for whatever reason we manage to line up the movement perfectly with entering an eclipse, then it's fine, because then we enter the eclipse, we move, and we cast Star Search, right? But if we enter eclipse, cast Star Search, and then we have to move once we're out of Astral Power, then we do nothing while moving, right? Then you move around and you're like Moonfire, Sunfire, which is really stupid. And I personally always liked the fact, in the past, before we had this kind of like pooling spending thing, that we were able to hover somewhat high Astral Power, and then we were able to spend it while moving. I thought it was a cool thing. But this here as well, this talent here, Cenarius Might, is again promoting this like pooling spending thing, and this one is even more extreme than anything we had before. Like, any other talent we have in our current talent tree is not promoting this playstyle as much as this talent. Because this talent it even says casting another spell cancels this effect. So you can't even cast Star Surge, refresh Moonfire, Star Surge. You literally have to refresh your dots probably before you enter Eclipse, and then enter Eclipse and be like Star Surge, and nothing else. And then you have no Astral Power left, and then you sit there. I don't know. I don't like this. I'm not a big fan of this talent. Then, Power of the Dream. Force of Nature grants an additional stack of Dream Bursts. Okay. Scenario might increase spell damage or healing by an additional 5%. Okay, so this is just like a number buff to the previous two talents. And then time elapsed while your major abilities are available to be used is subtracted from that ability's cooldown after the next time you use it, up to 5 seconds. I'm sorry, what? Time elapsed while your major abilities are available to be used is subtracted from that ability's cooldown after the next time you use it, up to 5 seconds. Well, the way I understand this is that, but that'd be weird. So the way I understand it is that, let's say my incarnation is ready, and I don't use it for 10 seconds, and then I use it, then instead of it being a 3-minute cooldown, it will be a 2-minute 55 cooldown. But that would be so weird, because what the fuck are 5 seconds? Nothing. Isn't that incredibly bad? That's horrible. It's absolutely nothing. Like, if you compare this talent to this talent, why would I ever take this? Just to get a 5-second cooldown reduction and a 3-minute cooldown? Oh, I guess it also works in Force of Nature. Maybe for Force of Nature, it could be nice. Because then you can line it up with pulsar procs better. If a Force of Nature, I can see it being nice. For Celestial Alignment, it's horrible. For Convoke, I guess it could also be fine. For Convoke, it's also not... Even a 2-minute cooldown, I feel like it's not that good. Also, especially if it works in... Because for Convoke, I feel like it's more for a Resto Druid, right? But you want Convoke to line up with the other cooldowns. Don't you want to have it line up with Flourish and stuff? And if I have a 5-second shorter Convoke and Flourish isn't shorter, then it's useless again, right? It'll make it a bit awkward to macro a 3-minute trinket with it. Oh no, it won't be awkward with a 3-minute trinket. The 3-minute trinket, or will it? Actually, yeah, you are right. True. Yeah, you're right. Because you're also using it. Yeah. Yeah, it would also be weird with a 3-minute trinket as well, yeah. Interesting, yeah. I don't know, this challenge seems bad. You can hold it so you're still having Convoke available every 1 minute. No. No, but it's the same as the trinket, Sebla. Like, let's say I hold Convoke for 5 seconds. Then I use Convoke. Now my Convoke is a 1 minute 55 cooldown. And my Flourish is still 1 minute though. So then I use Flourish and Convoke together. And then my... Yeah, so it's still fucked. Right? Alright, let's read the other one. Then we have Protective Growth. Your regrowth protects you, reducing damage you take by 8% while your regrowth is on you. Ooh, alright. Ooh, I like this talent. And kind of sucks is a defensive talent, while all of these other ones are offensive ones, but 8% damage reduction with a regrowth on you, that is nice. I like that. It's 8%, it's not a lot, but... Growth's Inspiration. Wrath and Starfire damage increased by 12%. Regrowth, Wild Growth, and Swiftman healing increased by 6%, sure. Orbital Strike applies Stellar Flare for 20 seconds, and Primordial Arcanic Pulsar grants Celestial Alignment for 2 additional seconds. Reforestation grants Tree of Life for 2 additional seconds. 2 additional Pulsar seconds, that's pretty good, I guess. 12% Starfire damage increase. I mean, it is a lot, I don't know. I don't know what's more worth it here. I guess this is another math question. Then Blooming Infusion, every 5 regrowths you cast, make your next Wrath, Starfire, or Tangling Roots instant, increases the damage it deals by 100%. Every 5 Star Surges or Starfalls you cast, makes your next regrowth or Tangling Roots instant. Oh wow, we also get instant regrowths now? 5 Star Surges though. So every 5 Star Surges or Starfall, we have a free regrowth, which then in return gives an 8% damage reduction. Yeah, I mean, I'll take it. But again, this is very much a defensive talent. So we have 2 defensive talents in this tree, on this path. This is full defensive and this is full defensive. Because I'm not going to cast 5 regrowths to get a 100% damage increase on a Wrath, right? I think regrowth is 12 seconds. Now you have the choice to cast 1.5 second regrowth or spend double DCD for bear form. I mean, bear form, it depends on what kind of damage it is, but having like an 8% damage reduction is not going to be the equivalent of having the extra HP of bear form. Depends, right? If you survive with the extra 8%, nice. But then you would always have to do a calculation, I guess. Obviously, it's for restoration, not balance. It's for restoration and balance. These talents are for both rest and balance. I mean, understand that this top part is for Resto Druid. I get that. Like, I understand that the top part is for Resto Druid. The bottom part is for Moonkin. The 5 regrowth for 100% Star Search. No, yeah, I get that. I understand that this is for Resto Druid. That's why I'm saying this is a defensive talent and this is a defensive talent. I'm saying this is a 0 damage increase and this is a 0 damage increase. And then we have Harmony of the Grove. Each of your Force of Nature trees increase damage your spells deal by 3% while active. Okay. Each of your Grove Guardians... Okay. Each of your trees... Was there a talent that gives me more than 3 trees? Not really, right? So it's a 9% damage increase for the duration of the trees being up. Yeah, so this, especially this talent here, really promotes lining up trees with pulsar procs, right? So the damage or the cooldown reduction here really matters, depending on like also the pulsar thing matters. Now, obviously, I don't know how this is gonna line up, but depending on how much astral power you generate, you have pulsar at different timings. And if a 10-second damage cooldown reduction on trees makes it line up a lot better, then you would obviously take that to get the full benefit of this in your pulsar proc. And the same goes for the pulsar time increase, because having two extra seconds of pulsar can be really good if it means that you get your full tree window into your pulsar proc, right? But yeah, interesting. I'm personally not the biggest fan to have a whole hero tree be created around the trees, because I personally don't like the trees as a thing. Like, the biggest problem I have with them is that they're not controllable. You just put them down and then they do something. You know, it's a bit yeah. So I'm not necessarily the biggest fan to have a tree be completely worked around the trees, but it might still be fun to play around it though. Since you get both doesn't mean that every 5 defensives use regrowth will give the 100% damage increase anyways. No, I mean, you will get every 5 regrowths you will get a 100% increased wrath, but that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. Like, if one of my wraths does 100% more damage once every 5 minutes, because how many times do you cast regrowth, right? It's gonna take you a long time to cast 5 regrowths during a normal fight. And then your wrath does 100% more damage. That's nothing. Like, that's negligible. You can ignore it, basically. Now, you can play around a little bit if you literally have like full downtime, right? If you have full downtime and you cannot cast anything on any target, well, then you would cast 5 regrowths to get a little bit of extra filler damage afterwards. But then you would also not be in Eclipse, and you would cast, because let's assume you're in downtime. Like, let's assume there's 10 seconds where there's absolutely nothing happening and there's no target to attack. Then you cast 5 regrowths to get 100% increased damage on Wrath or Starfire. But then you're not in Eclipse when that buff is applied. So you're casting a 100% increased damage Starfire in a non-eclipsed state, which, again, is nothing. So yeah, I mean, this is for sure negligible. You can basically pretend it doesn't exist. Even in Plus, it's useless, because me sitting still casting 5 regrowths is like, that takes me more than 5 seconds, right? I would have to stand there for, let's say, 7 seconds to cast 5 regrowths. And until that point, my tank is already in the next pack pulling. And I'm all the way behind, not being able to cast anything. And again, I'm also not in an Eclipse either. 100% increased damage on a filler is just no damage. It's very little. It's not worth it. And especially if you're casting a non-eclipsed filler. Because let's say you're in between packs, right? You just kill the pack and you're moving to the next. Let's say I'm casting 5 regrowths to enter the next pack, but then what do I have to cast? I have to cast Wrath, because I want to enter Lunar Eclipse, right? So I'm casting a non-eclipsed Wrath on, let's say, a 10 target pack. That's nothing. I can cast a Starfire, but even then, the Starfire is also uneclipsed. Now, you can, of course, if you have Incarn ready. Let's say you have Incarn ready, or you can proc a Pulsar. Then you have 100% increased Starfire damage. You proc your Incarn, and then you cast a Starfire to get 100% increased damage, then yeah, you can do that, of course. But again, this is all incredibly negligible and very not relevant. This is incredibly small. And most of the time, if people play around this, they probably even lose damage. I think a lot of people might be like, oh, I'm gonna play around this. And then they play around it and cast 5 regrowths, and they're gonna lose damage because they're falling behind and they're not there at the start of the pool to like dot up and stuff. Like, I think if people really play around this, they probably lose damage. They lose more damage than what they gain. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think these talents are not necessarily mind-blowingly interesting or good. But I also, like, the only thing I really don't like is the Scenarios Might. And of course, this control of the dream is, I don't know what that is supposed to be. And there's a lot of passive stuff, like a lot of passive damage increases and stuff, which is fine, I guess. The Scenarios Might, I really don't like what kind of playstyle it's kind of pushing us into again. Like so many other talents do. And I'm also not a fan of the whole tree being kind of created around treants. I'm just not a big fan of treants. But it might still be, as I said earlier, it might still be fun to play around the tree cooldown. Like, it might give us some like mini game within our rotation where we try to line up everything. Like, you're lining up your pulsar proc, you're lining up your pulsar proc with trees, and then you're using everything within those pulsar procs to get a little bit of an extra damage boost. Like, it would basically make us make our small cooldowns better. Right? Because we get this damage increase from Harmony of the Grove, so that means we get a small cooldown window every now and then, which is not bad, right? Because Moonkin, obviously having a 3-minute cooldown is very annoying and sometimes cause a lot of issues. So having a shorter cooldown window and it being buffed more through like trees or whatever is nice. The main question on these is if the trees cast their own moonfires or just yours, and if they interact with twin moons, since it could reduce RAM time. Also, the 6 of these is per tree or for the set of trees. Now, I think this is just bad no matter what. 6 seconds is too long. Even if every tree counts separately, and even if they all interact with twin moons, that's 6 moonfires that are being applied. That's nothing. Either there's more than 6 mobs, and then you have to apply your own moonfire anywhere. And if it's less than 6 mobs, then it saves you 2 globals or 3 globals, which is fine, you know, like, it's not horrible. But you also don't want to put these trees at the start of the pack. You have to think about that too. Because these trees are a damage, like, they're basically a damage gain. Like, they're a cooldown. Considering Harmony of the Grove and everything, right? So you want to be already in Pulsar and already have your damage rolling when you put the trees down, right? So you technically don't want to use these trees as like a ramp. You want to use the trees after, once you already have all of your dots up and all of your starfalls rolling and whatever, right? Because then you get this like extra damage increase. So this talent, I feel like, doesn't fit into the tree. Because all of these other talents, they promote using trees as a damage boost, as like a buff. But this, as you said, is kind of giving you like a ramp. Like, it helps you ramp in a bad way, but it does help you ramp. So I feel like this talent is very out of place compared to the other talents. Yeah, it's kind of like contradicting, right? Because this one for sure would promote to put trees down early in the pool. But then all the other talents promote to put the trees down once you already have everything else running. So it's a bit weird. Let's see what the hunters have. BM and MM. 30-second cooldown. Fire black arrow into your target, causing it to take shadow damage every 2 seconds for 16 seconds. Each time black arrow deals damage, you have a chance to reset the cooldown of aimed shot or barbed shot. Fire black arrow into your target, casting it to take shadow damage every 2 seconds for 16 seconds. Each time black arrow deals damage, you have a chance to reset the cooldown of aimed shot or barbed shot. Okay. We love some RNG. Gamba. Nice Gamba spec. Then Ranger's Finesse, Aim Shot, and Rapid Fire deal 50% increased damage. Barb Shot and Kill Command deal 50% increased damage. When Black Arrow resets the cooldown of an ability, gain 15 focus. Okay. More Gamba, nice. When a target affected by Black Arrow dies, the cooldown of Black Arrow is reduced by 12 seconds. Oh, that's interesting. But this is a very... I feel like these like resets on death can be very good, but most of the time it's not as useful. It would have to be a very specific boss fight. Just because when you do it in Blast Pool, most of the time things die at the same time. And then it's not as useful. But it's nice for, I don't know. Yeah. It would be kind of like an Infliction Warlock playstyle where you snipe certain mobs to get your stuff back. Intense Darkness. When True Shot or a Call of the Wild is active, Black Arrow deals damage 50% faster. Okay. There's some, like, this is a very passive damage increase, and this is very passive. And then we have Dark Hounds. Each time Black Arrow deals damage, you have a chance to manifest an undead hound to charge your target and deal shadow damage. All of these are very, like, single target focused. It's like a very single target focused hero tree, it looks like. Then Embrace the Shadows. You heal for 50% of all shadow damage dealt by you or your pets. What the fuck? That's insane. That's a lot of leech. Oh, shadow damage. Oh, never mind. It's just shadow damage. Okay, well, that's not that good. Acceleration grants you 3 seconds of survival of the fittest. Oh. Survival of the fittest activates acceleration at 50% effectiveness. Okay, not too bad. When multi-shot hits a target afflicted by Black Arrow, a burst of shadow energy erupts, dealing moderate shadow damage to all enemies near the target. This can only occur at once every 6 seconds. Oh. Okay, this is nice. So there's some AoE in here, after all. And then Death Shade. When you apply Black Arrow to a target, you gain the Death Blow or Hunter's Prey effect. What does that mean? I guess there's like a hunter talent that I'm not aware of. Then Dark Chains. Disengage will chain the closest target to the ground, causing them to move 40% slower until they move 80 yards away. That's so dumb. That's so dumb because this is a BM and MM tree. This is like it's like a PvP talent. Oh my god, that's such a bad talent for PvE. For PvP, I can see it being good or like okay. But a 40% slow on one target? I don't know, that seems horrible. That's very bad. Then Darkness Calls. All shadow damage you and your pet deal is increased by 10%. Kill Shot has a 50% chance to generate a charge of Aimed Shot or Barbed Shot when used on a target affected by Black Arrow. Okay. Withering Fire. When Black Arrow resets the cooldown of Aim Shot or Barbed Shot, a barrage of dark arrows strikes your target for shadow damage and increases the damage you and your pets deal by 10% for 6 seconds. That is... I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is... For BM, I can see this being... like a nice tree. Or like an okay tree. But for MM, like all of this RNG, isn't it really weird to play around? Because it's so RNG based. Because a 10% damage increase is obviously nice, but it's a 6-second window, and it's an RNG proc. Like it's very difficult to play around this, no? I don't know. I mean, I haven't played Hunter in a while, but maybe they don't mind the RNG that much. Maybe it's nice. I don't know what you can do in a 6 seconds window, but maybe that's enough for you to play around. I don't know. Then we have Fire and Frost. Frostfire, of course. Okay, let's see the disc. Holy One. Premonition. Replaces Power Infusion. 1 minute cooldown. Oh, wait, what? Replace Power Infusion 1 minute. Divine the future and gain access to a spell that gives you an advantage against your fate. Solace. Increase your target's healing received by 25% for 10 seconds. Increase your target's magic damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. Increase your target's physical damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. Ooh, I like this. I like this. I really hope this is better than any. I hope this is the best talent for all priest players, because it replaces PI and it turns it into a flat damage increase. But this is certainly worse than PI. A 10% damage increase for 10 seconds? Isn't that... That has to be worse than PI. It's for sure worse than PI. Oh, it's a 1 minute CD. Ah, okay, yeah. Okay, well, okay. Preventative measures. Increases the damage absorbed by Power Word Shield by 10% and the healing done by Prayer of Mending by 10%. Power Word Shield applies 1 stack of Prayer of Mending to your target. Prayer of Mending casts apply Power Word Shield to your target at 20% effectiveness. Grand Reveal. When your Power Word Shield is fully absorbed, or your Prayer of Mending heals, gain a stack of Grand Reveal. At 150 stacks, gain an additional charge of premonition. Oh, okay. Huh. That's interesting. Thanks for 3 months, Sylvia. Thank you so much. Then, Preemptive Care. Increase the duration of Atonement by 1 second and increase the duration of Renew by 3 seconds. Prompt Deliverance. Reduce the cooldown of Purify by 2 seconds. Reduce the cooldown of Purify by 2 seconds? Wait, isn't that magic? Isn't that a Dispel? Isn't Purify a friendly Dispel? That's pretty OP. It's very niche, but that can be very OP. Because there's no other class that can reduce their magic damage, their magic dispel, or any dispel. So having a 6-second dispel can be very good. It's very niche though, like, it would have to be a very niche situation where it's good. When an ally walks through your Angelic Feather, you are also granted 1% of its effects. Okay. I mean, it's also not bad. Reduce the cooldown of Premonition by 10 seconds. Ooh, okay, interesting. Premonition cannot trigger the Brilliance and Urgency effects. Restore 5% of your target's maximum mana. Increase your target's haste. No, why? Man. We had a flat damage increase right here. Right here. We had a flat damage increase right here. And then they turned it into haste again. Also, of course you're gonna take this. Why would I take a 10-second reduction on a 1 minute cooldown? Why would I want a 50-second cooldown, 10% damage increase? When no class in the world can benefit off of a 50-second cooldown. It makes no sense. It's stupid. Yeah, this... Ugh, of course everyone's gonna take versatile divinations. Of course. This is a useless talent here. Because every class either has 1 minute cooldowns, 2 minute cooldowns, 3 minute cooldowns, or something in between. Which all ends up lining up with 1 minute cities. No one is gonna want a 50-second premonition on cooldown. No one. Right? Like, that's just useless. So everyone's gonna take this, which turns it into a PI again with the haste. Which ruins everything. Fuck. Man, for a second I thought they had fixed PI. And finally made it so you can calculate the damage it gives. But I guess we're going back to haste buff. Fuck. Okay, then we have Waste No Time. Premonition costs your next power word Radiance. Heal or Prayer or Healing to be instant cast and cost 50% less mana. Reduce the cooldown of Power Word Life by 3 seconds and allows it to be usable on targets below 50% health. Okay. Pain Suppression reduces damage taken by an additional 10%. Pain Sub already... Oh, it's Pain Sub 40? So you have a 50% damage reduction. No, it is adding haste. When it's not turning it into haste, I mean... Like, it is adding it. It just means that it's, again, not... Like, the reason why I want it to be a flat damage increase and not a haste buff is because a flat damage increase can be calculated by automated programs like Details. If you gain a flat damage increase from someone else, it can easily be calculated in real time for Details, right? Which means that if this was how it would work, this magic damage dealt increased by 10 seconds, you would be able to immediately apply the damage gain that the person got to the priest, to the buffing priest. So it wouldn't show up as a damage increase for the like mage, let's say, but it would rather show up for the priest because you can immediately calculate it. A haste buff, on the other hand, cannot be calculated properly. Therefore, as soon as it's gonna be a haste buff again, you're again gonna invalidate damage meters, which I personally am not a fan of at all. And we have so many things nowadays that invalidate damage meters. It's very annoying. I just hate that we have damage meters, but they mean nothing. Like, yeah, we can look at them, but half of them are useless because one person gets PI, the other person gets Prescience, the other person has Ebonmite, the other person has Wind Fury, the other person does not. Like, it's so annoying. Increase the duration of your premonition effects by 2 seconds. Sure. Premonition effect is increased by 30% if the divine spell is different than the previous premonition. That seems pretty good. Increased by 30%. Then this is for sure better. Well, it depends who you're buffing. Clairvoyance. Premonition has a low chance to grant you clairvoyance. Grants your target and 2 nearby allies all the effects of premonition at 100% effectiveness. Excuse me, what? Has a low chance to grant you clairvoyance. Grants your target and 2 nearby allies all the effects of premonition at 100% effectiveness. Your target and 2 nearby allies. Oh my god, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's so bad. Are they okay? Like, is Blizzard okay? Are they good? Oh my god. They're honestly insane, yeah? There's just no shot. Like, I just cannot believe how stubborn they are with PI. It's crazy to me. It's incredible. How? Why? Why? Please, somebody tell me why. Why? Oh my god. Do you know what? I don't care. Just give everyone PI, man. Just give every single class a different PI. Might as well make everyone a support class. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna uninstall details. I'm just gonna press my buttons. Who cares about data and numbers anyway? Let's increase the delta between super coordinated groups and casuals. Let's do that. I'm sure that's very nice to balance then. Make PI raid white, delete bloodlust at this point. No, if you made PI raid white, then it would make sense again. And we specifically don't want it to make sense, guys. If everyone has the buff, then it makes sense. We don't want that. Yeah, this whole positioning thing is also right. That's why I'm saying, right? Like, this PI practice premonition thing, this is very complex. And I honestly don't understand why they're doing this. Like, I have some thoughts here. I have some thoughts. So I think one thing that Blizzard is trying to do is slowly make data less like manageable by the player base to make sure that people don't have like 100% accurate information / data to go off, because otherwise the game is like somewhat too complex for more casual players. Because it's true that no one likes to read up on guides and sim their characters a million times and watch this YouTube video and read this guide and blah 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 before they can start optimizing the rotation. I think the less clear it is what the best rotation is and what the best stats to go for are, the more enjoyable it is actually for like a more casual player, right? because then you don't have to do all of this research because there is no information to go off, or at least not as much information to go off, not as detailed. So the less information there is out there, the better it is for a casual, because then they just log in and play the game. And they go off, they do feely craft, you know, they just do whatever they think is best, whatever they think is best from their experience, right? The more we as a player base are able to figure out with actual math, the more information there is for people to also study, which is not necessarily the greatest gameplay for people. That's what's overwhelming people, right? If I'm a more casual player, it is really overwhelming to me if there's lots and lots of information for my spec to optimize on, right? If there's less information, then I don't feel that pressure to also read up on the information, and then it's easier for me to play the game and I'm not as overwhelmed, right? So I do think that that could be one reason. I obviously don't know what Blizzard's reasoning is behind anything, but I feel like that could be one of the reasons why they're really like diluting and like randomizing like all of this kind of data and making it less relevant. And not only is it less relevant, but it's like not properly digestible by even like Warcraft logs, right? Tries everything they can to filter out augmentation evoker damage and stuff to make sure it attributes to the correct target rather than to the aug evoker rather than the person that's buffed. But even that doesn't work 100% all of the time. And PI cannot be attributed to the priest. Like all of these things or Wind Fury. Like there's so many buffs we have nowadays that really cannot properly be attributed to the correct person, and therefore it really like muddles like what's best and what isn't. So it's easier for people to read up on info because there is less info that actually can be read up on, and it also makes it easier to balance for Blizzard because the less accurate info we have, the less balancing Blizzard actually has to do, right? Because if we don't know the actual numbers because it's diluted by PIs and this and aug buffs and blah blah blah, then we can also not necessarily know how good the balancing behind it is, right? So that's one thing, or that's two reasons why I think they maybe are doing this. I'm obviously not sure. But one big problem with these buffs and these support things, in my opinion, and I'm not sure if Blizzard is fully like thinking about this or fully understanding this, is that all of these buffs, this PI tree as well, and Aug Evoker specifically, is incredibly complex to get the full benefit out of. It is super complicated to get the absolute most out of an Aug Evoker, for example. And no one's doing that outside of maybe like the best guilds in the world. Like the only guilds who are absolutely maximizing the gain from Aug Evoker is Echo and like Liquid probably. And no other guilds, right? And the same would be with this PI thing. Like if you look at this PI thing, like think about it. You can get a 50-second cooldown on this premonition. You can get a 2 seconds longer duration. You can randomly buff close by players. Blah blah blah. Right. So there's so many things that you can theory craft here, and there's so many things you can optimize, which again makes this incredibly complex to get the full value out of, the maximum value. And a normal guild is not going to do that. They're not going to get the full value out of this. They just won't. A guild like Echo or Liquid that can sit there and theory craft for weeks upon weeks before the new raid comes out, they will be optimizing this as much as they can. And so what happens is that the skill difference and the skill difference between a guild like Echo and like a top 200 guild will increase the more they add stuff like this, right? Because the skill ceiling of World of Warcraft used to be pretty low compared to other games. To do the most amount of damage with any given class is not rocket science, right? But the more they add of these kind of support classes, the higher the skill ceiling is when you combine it with like a raid group. Because nowadays it's actually incredibly hard to fully, like, to get the full amount of damage you can gain from a full raid group is actually really hard. Like, there's so much coordination you actually have to do nowadays with evokers and PIs and wind furies and whatnot and all of these buffs that we have. So by adding more stuff like this, it increases the difference even more between the best guilds and the average guilds. And I feel like that's a problem for Blizzard for tuning. But, you know, maybe they don't think it's a problem. The information is still there. There are just a few people that have to be grind harder to make it understandable. But it's not, though. That's what I mean. Like, Blizzard is actually making the information so difficult to obtain that no one actually even figures it out properly. Like, the best example is Echo. They won the last race of first, right? And in the interview after the race of first was over, they admitted that they still did not know how much damage some of the classes did, because the hooks for Aug Evoker were broken in Warcraft locks, and they did not know how much damage Aug Evoker actually did. And they also did not know how much damage some classes did that got Aug Evoker buffs. So the truth is that sometimes, even though the smartest people are working on getting the proper information, they're still not able to. At least not in the given time frame that they have until the race is over. Afterwards, of course, when there's more time added, then more people can work on getting the information and they will eventually get it. If it's obtainable. If the information is not obtainable, then obviously they won't.